everyone, this is Lebogang Bogopane, also known as Miss T. Welcome to Moments of Reflection with Miss T on MCI TV. And today it is part 2 of gender-based violence. Today I have a very awesome guest. Yo guys, like butterflies in my stomach. If only you knew. I have a very, this lady, I respect her. She is my role model, so I'm trying to be calm. So we have the very beautiful, incredible, and intelligent Lebogang Bogopane. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Miss T. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the awesome words. I really don't know if I'm that awesome, but it's a compliment and I will gladly take it and own it. It's unfortunate that we are meeting under such trying times where we have to self-quarantine under lockdown and adhere to the lockdown regulations, excuse me. But nonetheless, thank you for having me at your home. Thank you for doing the awesome, beautiful work with regards to keeping people informed and knowledgeable with regards to different issues on your Moments of Reflection TV show. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Guys, come blush. Okay. I just want you to tell people who you are in your own words, and I guess so that people just know who's Lebo.
Well, Lebo is a young woman, a mother of one, the last born from 3 siblings. Born Koharangua, bred Momututung. I'm a very simple, humble, hardworking, very, very passionate, free-spirited woman. I'm a founder of an internationally renowned organization, Yamogai Momututung, which was founded in the year 2005 by myself under the guidance and stewardship of my mother. And we work with issues of gender-based violence, we work with issues of domestic violence, we work with issues of family conflicts and resolutions to those challenges. Lebo is a God-fearing woman. Lebo is a woman who loves family, who loves peace. Lebo is a woman who loves togetherness. Lebo is, amongst many accolades, an ambassador for the One Young World, an alumni of the Young African Leadership Initiative, which was launched by the then President of the USA, President Barack Obama. Lebo is a professional fellow and alumni of the Michigan State University in the USA. Lebo is a change maker. Lebo is on the top 5 young influential women under the Keys E, an initiative which is based in London. Lebo is an ambassador for Young Generations Against Poverty, an organization which is now a part of my family, based in Australia. Lebo is part of an opportunity collaboration organization, which is based in the USA, but once a year we do a debriefing and a retreat where we go to Mexico and just unwind and reconnect. And Lebo is Lebo. Amongst many, Lebo is Lebo, and Lebo ke mwana wa mogae.
Hi guys, looking like this is why this is my role model and I'm so nervous today. But I'm going to try to keep it together. So we called you today because you work with gender-based violence and you know it, and this is part 2. So we just wanted to elaborate on this topic because this is something alone. People have been talking about it all the time. Some people don't even understand what it is. Some people think it's only boxed into one. So as a person that's running an organization that deals with gender-based violence, I just want you to educate us a bit about gender-based violence. What is this gender-based violence? And just so that people understand what we're talking about.
Okay. I think we come from the fact that, firstly, I want to thank you and your team, Bundate Matabane, for having part 2 on this topic, because it's a topic which is trending globally. It's a very emotional and painful topic because many people continue to lose their lives as a result of their gender, as a result of their sexual preference and their behavioral preferences. And they become vulnerable and they become targets and they become victims. And unfortunately, others pass on being victims. Others have an opportunity to be rehabilitated and become survivors. So thank you very much for having part 2. It's a very, very serious issue which needs more communication. But I think to stress it further, it would be nice if we can have part 3 and have a male to come and be able to share the issues and the challenges, because it is an issue that is so much relevant and significant and should include males. However, the challenge that many of us do is that we tend to block them out and say it's a conversation amongst women. But these women are complaining about the ill treatment which they are receiving from the men. So it would be very nice and very important to have a male perspective so that the men can also be able to tell us what is forcing or causing them to react in a manner that they do. And you'll find that there are also other men out there who are also being abused and are, dying in silence because they don't know which initiatives or supporting systems or even mechanisms are out there for them to be able to use so that they can also be rehabilitated. So you'll find that a man who was once a victim automatically becomes a perpetrator because they inflict pain that was inflicted upon them, and they couldn't know how to deal with that pain because the supporting system was not there. So that's the first thing that needs to happen in terms of gender-based violence, because you cannot speak gender but exclude the men out of the topic. You cannot speak gender but exclude the LGBTI plus community with regards to this topic, because they are also vulnerable, because they are also being discriminated upon simply because of their sexuality, simply because of who they are and coming out of the closet. That is why it's still a challenge to be able to get others to come out of the closet because of fear of rejection, fear of intimidation, fear of harassment, and not even having a sense of belonging. And you'll find that most of the people that are doing this to them are people within their households, people within their family cycle, people that are supposed to be advocating and giving them the support. So that is the challenge that normally faces us as a community. So the first step will be addressing all different parties to come to the table so that we can have a conversation. We can have a dialogue. We can have an understanding. Because gender-based violence, domestic violence, abuse of children, it's not an individual issue. It's a societal issue. It needs everybody. Private sector, public sector, issues of NGOs, CBOs, faith-based organization, business people, they also need to party, politicians as well, so that we can all be able to come up with what we call a holistic approach when addressing gender-based violence. But I think now that we are in lockdown level 3 and we are still having this serious monster which is called COVID-19, which is so invisible. I mean, under normal circumstances, South Africa is on the epicenter in terms of gender-based violence. Let's now think back before COVID-19. South Africa is one of the countries that is on the top 5. And I'm not talking only in the continent, but globally so, in terms of the scourge of violence on women and children, as well as the vulnerable groups. And when you speak of the vulnerable groups, you also include the elderly. You also include people with disabilities. Because a few years ago, we had a case of a child that was using sign language to be able to communicate. The child was coming from Mumo, and that child was raped. Now, at that time, I had never felt so defeated, because I could see the pain in this child's eye. But because there was a communication breakdown, I was unable to. We had to take her from pillar to post. And imagine, if I cannot help her, it means there is secondary victimization. We get to the courts, there isn't an interpreter that can be able to interpret. The poor girl has to now resolve to writing down. Then we have to read. Then we have to write down. Now imagine the concentration span. She's in pain. She needs somebody that can be able to understand. Sometimes whatever that she writes down is not directly what she's feeling. already that is a barrier on its own. So it's painful. It's painful because we really need to come up with, I always say, fancy but doable and practical solutions with regards to this problem that we have. Now, back to COVID-19. We had level 5, where alcohol was banned. We had level 4, where alcohol was still banned. Now, the gender-based violence or the domestic violence issue, it was there, but you know, because alcohol was not easily accessible, we knew that the violence and the abuse is there, but the level or the impact in terms of the violence will not be so severe. Because when somebody is of a sober mind, at least the conscience is there. They will inflict pain, but at the minimum. Now, somebody who is highly intoxicated, at times they don't even feel what is happening. Hence, once level 3 came, femicide statistics started to spiral out of control. We had issues of Tsogofadzopule, we had issues of this one, we had so many issues. So basically the alcohol triggered this entire thing. That is why now our statistics, Momutuku Network, are so high. And we have to be very, very, very proactive. But at the same time, be able to adhere to the World Health Organization's guidelines on COVID-19. Because as much as the child is there and she's going through pain, I cannot go and give her that hug because I need to maintain the social distancing. So we have to come up with different tactics and different ideas as to how we can still continue doing the job, which is so necessary and so important, but also adhering to the regulations. So it's very difficult. It's very, very hard on everybody. People are losing their jobs. The men in the house who we call breadwinners are now unemployed. They are going through so much frustrations. Now, in a household where there's a woman and there's a child, and the man was the provider, now he can no longer do that, excuse me. He takes out the frustration on the kids, on the woman. And now that the alcohol is there and it's available, what do you think this man is going to do? So we have a very, very big challenge ahead of us. Funding is another issue. Donors are more focusing on safekeeping their staff. So the social responsibility factor, which they normally use to provide NGOs like ours with, has now reduced drastically, because instead of forking more money and investing in the social responsibility, they are looking at staff retention, because the production has now decreased and everything has declined, and the inflation rate is now high, and everything is now very expensive to get, and sales are down. Growth is not there. We are facing a recession as a country. So everything is...
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And when you look at the person who is mostly impacted by this entire things are people that are coming from poorest families, people who are so hard hit with poverty. Now imagine, under normal circumstances they are poverty stricken. Now with COVID-19, you can just imagine the level of poverty, the level of desperation, the level of hunger. So it's a big crisis. It's a big crisis, and everybody needs to be part of it. Everybody should not hide behind somebody else and say, it's not my problem because it's not happening to you. Guess what? It's your problem, because tomorrow it might not directly happen to you, but it might happen to somebody within your social circle, within your family, your neighbor, your co-worker, somebody that you go to church with. So it is your problem, and you need to be party to finding a resolution or a solution to it.
Sure, like, I'm just listening to you and I'm thinking, like I said, we only think on the base level, and you just went and like took us down to say the foundations and everything and the impact of this COVID-19, because some of us who, I'm not saying maybe privileged, but who are not really experiencing COVID the way other people are experiencing it, and the fact that this pandemic came in our lives and changed our lives so much. Now that you are highlighting how, because of lockdown, the impact that is having on people, the fact that so many people are losing their jobs. They are becoming frustrated. And one other thing that people don't even understand is that gender-based violence, like you said, it's not just about women or children. I think as a country, or most people, we've been just saying against women and children, against women and children. And now we are forgetting that the men are also impacted. And also, I want us to talk about gender-based violence, not only it being physical, because people only think if he hits me or if she hits me, then it's abuse. But emotional abuse, that is one thing that a lot of people are facing, but don't know how to say I'm abused because I don't have a mark. I don't have proof to say I've been abused because that person only told me those things and nobody else can see the impact that it does to me. So as a person who's been dealing with such people, how do you then tackle emotional abuse and like generally what your experience with this emotional abuse and how people can come out and speak about it as well and not just say I'll wait for him or her to hit me first?
Oh, okay. I think prior to that, let me just make a quick point and just pass. Before we speak of gender-based violence, domestic violence, violence on women, number one, there's the human rights. We have human rights, which is the pillar to everything. Others, they just come. But gender-based violence is committed or is an act that is done by a human being on another human being. So it infringes one's human's rights. Before you can even get to the gender or the setup or the scenario. So the minute you think of another human being and the minute you start to think of doing something to them, you need to know that you are infringing on their right to life freely and have the now I call it the luxury, and have the luxury to walk and across the street. Fear of harassment and fear of intimidation.
Sure,
So those that do it must know that you are doing this to another fellow human being. Just because somebody chooses to be lesbian or gay does not say they are lesser of a human being. They are equal to you who chooses to live whatever kind of a life that you want to live. And who are you to pass a judgment on somebody else and say that they are not worthy of living this type of a life? What about you, the type of life that you're living? Do you think you are worthy of living there? Hence I always tell people that we all live in glass houses, all of us. And because we live in these glass houses, no one has the right to throw a stone at any glass house, because imagine how many stones would come back and be thrown at your house. So that is the example that I always tell to people. So now back to the issue. In South Africa, we have such beautiful legislations and such beautiful policies that have been drawn up. Our Constitution, Chapter 2 of the Constitution being the Bill of Rights. Those are beautiful legislations, if only all of us could adhere to them. Within the domestic violence, we've got what we call the Domestic Violence Act. So the Domestic Violence Act tells you different types of violences that are there. You have the physical, where somebody would be slapping you around, somebody would be assaulting you, there'll be gravely bodily bruises and scars, and then you go to the hospital and they fill out that particular section in terms of your medical report, where they do even show on the diagram the different parts which you were injured on. You have verbal. If somebody insults you, somebody ahoroha, that's verbal abuse. They are insulting you, you can also be able to lodge a complaint about that. You have your emotional and your psychological abuse, where somebody is continuously degrading you. Somebody is telling you you are fat, you are ugly, you are thin, you are this, you are that. So those things, they have an impact on you psychologically and emotionally, because your self-esteem, it goes way beyond down. You no longer love yourself as you used to. You have self-doubt. You have this thing of saying, "Oh, Mara Kiskobo, oh Mara." Do you understand? So then you such things, they result in mental health, where people start to commit suicide, where people start thinking less of themselves, and they think that their self-worth is not enough, and they have so many doubts. You have financial abuse. Financial abuse is whereby you are in a marriage with your husband, perhaps he is the one that is providing the finances in the house. Perhaps, let's not reverse the roles. It is the wife that is working and the husband that is not working. But you are constantly abusing that person financially because you are not giving them remuneration maybe to be able to do the household responsibilities of buying groceries, of paying the lights and electricity and all those things. But you expect a warm plate of food when you get home. Where is that person going to get that food from? Because there is no money. So that is part and parcel of a financial abuse. Because the minute you say, "Kyaunyala," for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, irrespective of who loses the job, whether it's the husband or the wife, it should not even matter. But we know in today's society it matters. If the husband in jail tomorrow at the mines, they are saying you are retrenched. Next month, divorce is coming. But if the roles are to be reversed, and this is very sad because I'm also a woman, and the woman loses the job, the husband will not divorce. So, you know, sometimes we need to go back to our basics. We need to go back to the roots. Why umunyetse? Why did you say yes? And now Sheila, you understand? So people tend to easily forget such things. You know, we also have sexual abuse, whereby you can still be in a marriage, and either the wife or the, you know, it shouldn't only be the husband. Even the woman, if they force themselves onto you, if you don't feel like today you are in a sexual mood, as a human being, it is your right to say, I get sharp to engage in sex. And your partner, because he loves you and he respects you, should be able. That's why people say, why or why are sex, it's something that is beautiful. It's something that is pleasurable. It's something that should be enjoyed by both parties. So if we're not enjoying only one and the other person, what kind of a love is that? That is a selfish love. You know, a selfless love is where you make sure that Mutwaga Lena is happy. Mutwaga Lena is reaping the same benefits of pleasure as I'm benefiting. Hence you have rape within a marriage. You'll find that one will be like, my husband raped me. But I have never found a case where the husband would say, my wife raped me. But I think those cases are there. It's just simply an issue of some of the men, they don't even know. Because many would go to the police station. Oh, rape, maybe it's a joke. You understand? So maybe such scenarios are the ones that are making the men not to report. But it's also there. But nonetheless, in terms of these different scenarios that I've given, the bottom line is all of them do fall within the Domestic Violence Act, and we know that in South Africa it is championed by the Department of Social Development as well as the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. So those are the two leading institutions which we have, where the Department of Social Development is there in terms of support, in terms of prevention, in terms of advocacy, and, you know, running all these psychosocial support services. Equally, the Department of Justice is there in terms of the justice criminal system being effective, being in place. Things such as where they say the evidence is what is this? It does not warrant for a court or whatever the issues, all those technicalities, you know. Sometimes you'll find that they'll be saying to you that no, the forensic department didn't get anything or whatnot. So the Department of Justice is there to ensure that if it's a case of rape, proper processes and procedures were followed. For instance, if you have to take the clothing of a victim, you cannot put them in a plastic bag.
Sure, okay.
You need to put them in a brown bag. Because the plastic bag, the minute weighs what happens to it? So that water, if they take it to the next step, maybe to the lab or whatever, you'll find that the forensic evidence has been tampered with, or they'll say that there was lack of forensic evidence. But if it was put in a brown paper bag, which is what we do also in Mututu Network, when we do our awareness campaigns, we do tell the communities, if you happen to find yourself or you are raped, first thing first, you need to communicate with the police. The police, they know we have a crisis center. You come to the crisis center for crisis intervention, where we even give you victim support. If you are not free to go alone to the hospital, there's a volunteer who will go with you to the hospital to give you the necessary support, so that even to remind, I cannot remember, guys, because mistake can be done by anybody, whether even if you are a high court judge or whatever, anybody can do a mistake. Say, hey, Ghana, don't forget the brown bag. After the rape kit has been opened and the rape kit has been used by the doctor and the evidence is collected and whatnot and whatnot. If ever the person has to go to court, we have victim court support where we physically allocate or dedicate one of the volunteers to go to court with that particular person, whether it is even to obtain a protection order. Because sometimes we know that you will want to have a protection order, but you are scared of going to court because the person whom you are applying the protection order for, maybe they'll come with their family, maybe they'll be making negative remarks and whatnot. So how one, you will not have that support. 10 to 1, what are you going to do? Oh, Jika, and go home. But if there's somebody there with you who has solely dedicated and committed, or they are with you there, obviously you will be finding the strength to carry on with the process. Sometimes that is why we don't understand when women but drop at the case. Sometimes it's because of the lack of support is not there. You know, they don't want to go for, because already many people are losing hope in our justice system, in our processes as a country. So we need to make sure that we get them back and we tell them, in terms of this whole thing, now my role is but my role will help you till there. Somebody else needs to take over because this is a relay.
Yeah.
And we need to complete it. And the completion of the relay is where a victim is rehabilitated to a point where we say, you're no longer a victim, but you are a survivor that can be reintroduced back into the community, being fully functional. Knowing, yes, you might relapse, but the relapse will not take you to square one.
Yeah.
You know, but then there are also supporting systems in terms of dealing with the relapse, should the relapse occur. So that is the holistic approach where everybody needs to be part, where it's an integrated system where everybody knows that now I'm from healthy, this is my role. If a victim comes, they are raped, we need to ensure about ready prophylaxis before a certain period so that they do not run the risk of being infected with HIV. You understand?
So you were telling us about everybody having a role to play in regards to gender-based violence and the processes that are taken.
Yeah, I think we all need to understand, Jorge, when we speak of gender-based violence, we speak of a particular human being, an individual, whose rights have been violated depending on the type of violation or act that was done. And when you look at having a holistic approach, it's not going to be a one solution fix for all the problems. And also at some point you might not need all the stakeholders or role players within a particular issue. Within the integrated victim empowerment strategy, there's what we call a continuum care and development plan, whereby each and every care and development plan will vary depending on the nature of the violation or the nature of the trauma that the victim is particularly going through. So if it's an issue of financial abuse or financial challenges or maybe verbal abuse, the care plan will differ in terms of the strategies that have to be taken versus if it's a physical abuse or a psychological abuse or you know, even a verbal abuse. So it will all depend in terms of the type of act and also which role players. But I think what also needs to happen within these very same stakeholders or role players, we all need to communicate with each other in relation to that particular individual, because there has to be closure, there has to be healing. Sometimes you find that the psychosocial support fails the victim, and the victim decides to take that trauma and pack it somewhere in their head, and they choose not to deal with it. Years will pass, others will assume that that particular victim is now a survivor, and then something happens and it triggers that thing mentally, and then it comes back, and then you find that people are saying but then when you look at the system that was followed, you'll find that the system somewhere failed this particular person, and simply because there was no communication. Because I mean, if this type of piece has to be torn into two like this, but we need this piece to be stuck together. Now, on my own, I won't be able to do it. I might say it's stuck like this and it's perfect. You might come with a magnifying glass and say, well, I don't think so, because the lines are not aligned. Or maybe the tape that you used is not correct for this type of a paper. You know, trauma is something else. You will always carry the scars with you. Irrespective of where you go. Things will not be the same. The trauma will be there. But it will be nice if the strategy that was used to assist you in dealing with the trauma is one where it's very, very strong. It's one where it's very, the concrete is stable, or the foundation is stable, to an extent that even if something happens, but you can still be able to manage whatever situation that you're in. And I think that's where the challenge is, because we tend to say, no, it's not my problem. The problem is Mapodisa. Mapodisa, they are not trained. The problem is the masculine. The problem is the social work. The problem is the root. Do you understand? When are you going to say, this is a problem? But now as an individual, within this problem, it might not be a big role. You might just be a neighbor, or your role is to pick up the phone and say, there is something that is not right. This thing of saying it's it needs to stop, because yes, it might be a false alarm because of excitement. But at least we know, we are not assuming as to who is being caused by what. How would you feel if tomorrow you find out that person on Ahua has unfortunately passed on? You had the power and the freedom of movement to be able to do something about it, but you chose not to. So within society, everybody needs to know, before you blame, it came up and said they are ineffective. Well, now what did you do as an individual to try and address this issue? Because before you pass the buck, you need to first look at yourself. So get the mentality and the behavior that we need to change as Batu around the world, and also to stop fearing. It's because you care. That's why you inquire. Not because you are nosy, but because you care about the well-being. Like now, many people are doing food drives because of COVID-19. Many people are fundraising, many people are distributing water, old clothes, and it's not because these people want to be better than others, it's because they care. And they know that the 2% nyana that they are doing for somebody else, it goes a great mile. If it was possible, we could all be in lockdown, having stockpiles, having food, having groceries in our cupboards, wherever, and not going anywhere and waiting for this thing. But in reality, it cannot, because people are hungry. People are hungry. That is why there's a saying, "Mwana halile pay for, mwana ulakara." So if you're hungry, what will you do? You will roam the streets until you get something to eat, risking yourself in being infected with this corona. But that is the risk that you're willing to take. So it's the same thing with gender-based violence. Like more risky, I don't want to continue being part of the statistic. Yes, I'm a survivor. Yes, I've been through a whole lot of pain and trauma and humiliation in my life as a woman. But now is the time for me to say what it is that I can do for other women and other children not to go through what I went through, not to endure the pain and humiliation. Because if they have to endure the same thing, and then now I'm here and I'm continuing to network but I'm not really impacting them, then now it means I'm contributing to their abuse. Because I'm at a level where I could be helping them, but I'm not helping them. Now back to the issue of COVID-19. Now we are doing things like tech. We have online counseling. We have telephonic counseling. I will also share the numbers where people can send us a "please call me," and we call them back. Sometimes they want to report abuse. Other times they want to inquire about the services that we render. Since the lockdown started, they want to find out if they can come to the center Will we open the doors to them? And if they do come to the center, what kind of problems or challenges are we accommodating, So even though we are restricted in some way, but we are still providing the essential, urgent, necessary, needed services for our women and children. So it's very much important that people have to understand that yes, lockdown is here, COVID-19 is here, but we are not stuck. We are moving.
Yeah.
Everybody in jail is busy doing this and that. Others are even doing illegal things where they are inflicting pain on other people. So we really need to sit down and use a holistic approach and use an approach where it's not a one man or a one woman show, but everybody takes part and everybody contributes. And if you don't contribute your part, we should be able to ask you, you were supposed to do ABC. Why Osayeta? And you must give a response. Sometimes you are a human being, you have your own issues, and you have to also address these issues of other human beings. So we know nobody is a superhuman or a superman or a superwoman, but if you talk, maybe somebody can fill in for you whilst you're also addressing whatever issues that are hindering you from performing that support which is needed by that person. So the communication, especially within gender-based violence, is key. It's very, very important, because we might think that this color is black. No, it's not black, it's gray. But because we look at it always, we think it's black, it's black. But when we unpack it, we realize, it's actually not black, it's gray. Even with whatever system that we have in government, I always tell people, we have issues of water. We know that water is continuously interrupted and what. And it's an issue that needs to be addressed. But in the meantime, while we are waiting for the issue to be addressed, obviously there will be those that will be adding the pressure for the issue to be addressed. But the immediate problem now, you have those that can afford to buy themselves water and drink. You have those that cannot even afford to buy a loaf of bread. How in the world will they afford to buy a 5 liters of water? So we need to look at those ones to say, okay, because they are just like us. Whilst the issue is being addressed, now my role can be to outsource water, so that everybody can at least be able to drink clean, safe, healthy water. So but to understand, they say, yes, but also has another solution. And as a whole, it's mandatory for everybody to look for another solution. No. How corner? But choose. It's not a force for it. Go and help them. No, it's not like that. If you can, and you are at liberty, and others have the financial muscle, others have families, maybe they can get water, others wanna need connection, others wanna. So whatever that you have, whatever means, if you see somebody that is thirsty and they need water, why not?
Sure. So it is very important that everyone knows that your role, whatever it may be, is important. Nobody should just sit and say, nah, there's nothing I can do or I can. So Uslebo, you touched on something I wanted us to talk about, and I want us to get into it, if you don't mind, about you being a survivor. Because I wanted people to understand, before we get into your story, why you have this passion about gender-based violence. That I admire you so much, because it's not easy to go through something and then after going through it and saying, I want to help others, and do it in the way that you do it, with passion, that you go all out, that sometimes you even forget yourself. Because I've been to the center, I'm one of the people who've seen you in action, that you get dirty. I know you dress up, but people don't know that when they see you at the center, you really care. It's not the thing of, it's a job for you. It's not a job. It's something, I could even say it's your purpose. It's something that God has trusted you with. And I remember when I was at your center, you invited me, and we were talking to young kids under the age of 15, and they were there and they were victims, because people just think older people are going through this. And I was looking at those young kids, and I had to talk to them, I had to motivate them. And for me, I was like, man, when I went through this abuse at home and violence that I experienced, I was their age. I was this young, because when you're going through it, you don't really realize how young you are until you look at somebody else who's in that age and they're going through it. So for you, seeing all these different women and children come in and out, and you can see yourself in them day in, day out, just like your story, what you've been through, and how did you gather yourself to say, you know what, I've been through this, but I'm going to help people.
Okay.
How do you do it?
I think let me rather first start what I've been through. I'm gonna summarize it as much as I can. I don't know if you recall, I said I was born Kuharangua, but I was raised Momotutu. So now I grew up in a family that was filled with domestic violence. I'm a premature now. My mother gave birth to me when she was, I think, almost 7 months pregnant, and I stayed in an incubator for some time, according to the stories that are being narrated to me. And one of the causes of the early birth or the premature birth was simply because of the domestic violence that was occurring at home. Because of this very same domestic violence, we became homeless. We were one of the elite families, Koharangua. My mom and dad, they built a double-story mansion from the ground. They had a coal business that was going good for them, but everything was beautiful. You know, we were the envy of other families. Families looked up to us up until this monster came. The monster was there. It was always there, but it grew because nobody addressed it. And even if there were supporting systems there for my mother, they were not exposed to people like her, because you can understand they were married during the apartheid era, and all these cultural issues. To instill discipline. So that is the type of toxic behavior that my father was also raised in, and as a result, the very same, he inflicted it on my mother. Also, I this thing of intergenerational, it's very, very important, because when we were doing our family tree, we found that my great-grandmother died being a victim of domestic violence. My grandmother died also being a victim. My mother survived domestic violence. My sister survived domestic violence. I also became a victim, but with me, to show the seriousness and the severity of this thing, I was raped, with domestic violence being the root cause at the age of 12. And I was married young, and I was abused by my late husband. So you can see that now I was not only the domestic violence, but I had a complement of the rape. So I wondered and said, and also homelessness and poverty and hunger, because my dad sold our double-story mansion. We became homeless. My mother suffered a stroke. She endured a stroke, because you can imagine, you start building this big castle from the ground. In a blink of an eye, it's taken away from you. No explanation, no, hey, heads up, next week the house is going to be taken. Because my father just left abruptly, packed his bags and left, knowing very well that he sold the house, knowing very well that we will be evicted. So we came to Mututu. A very good Samaritan housed us whilst Mama was in hospital. Hence, people don't like, sometimes people will be like, why would I come Mututu so? Mututu saved me. It saved me from suicide. It saved me from prostitution. It saved me from so many things. Because this good Samaritan, anybody could have housed us. And they did try to house us, but I was raped. And this Samaritan came to a shack. And we stayed in that shack, from being homeless. And it's funny because domestic violence, it's funny, it's tricky, it's confusing. When we were still with our father and our mother, people outside, my mother's family, they thought we were living in lips of luxury and that we didn't want to associate with them. But at home, it was in a limolao, it's just you. You don't go out to visit your cousins. You don't.
Isolated.
You understand? So we were isolated. Do you understand? And when you reach out, Bonagi, they do not know that you were restricted from associating with them. They think, because they are no longer there. Now they want us. They are going to burden us. So what do? And remember, we were still kids. The pain of being rejected by your family is heartbreaking. So it comes with a lot of issues. Hence I say, now when somebody tells me something, I look at it at various angles because of my experience with domestic violence. I don't just listen and say, okay, fine. Or I don't just observe and be like, okay, fine. I need to understand everybody's side of the story because it's very quick to make a mistake or a misjudgment or a misunderstanding because of you are very emotional or you're taking this one side or you're being this or you understand. So then we came to Mutukun and somebody housed us here and I continued with my education, and I still went to the very same school that I was going to under enormous, strenuous, painful, degrading, At some point I didn't have sanitary pads. I used to use a piece of cloth because I couldn't. Hence I'm so passionate that no girl that I know of should not have the sanitary pads because they are mandatory. So you can understand having to go through adolescence. People would be like, hey, Lebo, there's an odor. And it was me smelling because I didn't have the adequate necessary sanitary pads and I was still young. And because I was raped, obviously my menstrual cycle came very quickly, quicker than I could ever even think of because of the damage of this penetration that was done unto me, where my innocence was just like literally torn or ripped out from me. And I got married very, very young. I was under this trance that, my mother was a bad wife. There's no way that our father could have treated us the way that he did without her having done something. Not understanding, sometimes people are just plain mean. Or people are mean, but they don't understand how they are mean. They think what they are doing is correct, or they are not really sure of the consequences of their action. So I got married young, bad mistake. If one could imagine the level of abuse that my mother went through, that for me, the abuse that I went through was at an advanced mode, where when my late husband would come in, we had a toilet in the house, but the cruelty of that man, and if we had a disagreement or a misunderstanding or a conflict of some sort, or me asking him something, I wouldn't say like a Sure. So that's what I'm saying, the abuse became to an advanced mode. And at some point I sat down with myself and said, you know what? If this is what I'm going through, if that is what my mother went through, shit, what is this one going to go through? So it had to end. This generational curse had to end. And I had to start prioritizing. And when I say prioritizing, I mean me. I had to learn to love myself. There's no way, I love you more than You cannot love somebody else if you don't love yourself. So I had to love myself with all of those things in me, those horrible monsters that I hated. I had to first hate myself in jail. And I had to learn to accept and to get help and to speak and to love myself and to appreciate myself, because I couldn't allow this thing to continue any further. I couldn't allow myself to become a statistic. Where if they count Baba raped and Baba committed suicide plus 1 year, I couldn't. I just felt that this is not why I was born. I mean, I fought from my mother's womb. I could have died. She could have miscarried. But something just kept on pushing me to fight for my life. So I have this life. It is not going as good as I would want it to go. But I have to push. I have to penetrate the system. I have to tip the system. No matter who says what, I have to survive. So for me, domestic violence, gender-based violence, it's a survival of the fittest. It's a dog-eat-dog world. You have to be on your A game for the support of others. Nobody gave me that support. It was a very lonely, miserable, horrible life. Even on my worst enemy, I don't know if I have any, but I wouldn't wish for them to go through half of what I went through. But I'm glad I went through it, because had I not gone through it, I don't think I would be sitting here with you. I don't think I would have achieved or accomplished whatever it is that I have. I don't think I would be in a position to be able to help other people, because sometimes you need to understand the pain. You need to have at least experienced it. It's not a necessity, but it's somewhat of an intro, because now sometimes I even walk barefoot, because I know, and the beautiful thing is, how you don't make the woman, because sometimes that is the best mechanism, where you remove one party from the situation, then there must be calmness. And somebody must think twice or thrice, to say, thank God they came and took her away. Now we will no longer we are in conflict because of mangwa jola mang. Mara, it will also be because there's murder or there's assault. Do you understand? So that is why as a person, just that simple act, waking up, taking that woman, placing her at a place of safety, where she is safe. It's saving her life and also saving the life of the other partner, who, if ever, maybe the center was not there, would no longer be another part. Maybe it would be a perpetrator, because maybe they could have committed an act of crime because of the high intensity of the emotions. And also my experience has taught me never to judge. Never, ever, ever to judge. No matter how crazy or scary or messed up the situation is, but you should always be a neutral part. Even if that woman has got such bruises and stuff, don't judge. Up until you get to the bottom of the situation. Obviously, the act of the bruises and whatnot will be taken care of. That is why we have the law enforcement. Now, I'm not a law enforcement officer. My role is to give support to the victim, is to try and protect the victim at all costs, to be part of the rehabilitation process, because it's power. If you have the ability to love somebody who has never been loved, and they feel that love, or you have the ability to make somebody feel good, physically you might change, you might become old and frail and grey, as some of us are, aging gracefully, but the feeling that that particular person felt, how you made them feel at that particular, they will never forget. It will stay with them for the rest of their life. That is why I always use my NGO's quote that it's not how you look like that matters. When you part with people, it's how you make them feel. If it was a good feeling, they will phone, when are we meeting up? Because they love that feeling. People, when they see you, they become happy because they know that with a good feeling. And that is what I always strive for. I always leave people with a good feeling. And I treat people the way that I would also want them to treat me. And those two things are what actually assist me in penetrating the system, in going forward. But I cannot stop. This is me. GBV is me. Domestic violence is me. Child abuse is me. So it's in my DNA. It's something that I was born into. And it is something that I will die fighting, because we all deserve to live a happy, safe, free, loving life. We should all be fighting for opportunities, not fighting each other, but doing it in a dignified manner, in a professional manner, in a loving manner. I should be able to address your mistakes, what is wrong with it? When are we going to say, let's address misunderstandings and conflicts, but in a loving manner? When are we going to leave our weapons and our guns and our fists and start talking? So now, what times we are on some points over or Mike Tyson or Evander Holyfield, so that I can say, okay, what shall I know? Or yes, do you understand? So you another problem. We use different mechanisms. Why does somebody say Lerato? In as much as God have been so much like Lerato, but Lerato, it's something that I still have hope for. Where there is love, there's peace. Where there's love, there's joy, there's comfort, there's progress.
Yeah. So, Uslebo, when talking about your organization, one other awesome thing you're doing is you have a bakery. A lot of people will ask themselves, why a bakery and a domestic violence place of safety? can you just tell us how the bakery came to be and why you thought of specifically having a bakery at the center?
Our organization is an NGO. It relies heavily on donor funding. But at the same time, because the issues we are addressing are so complex, it has to sustain itself. So the bakery, because we wanted a project that is big, a project which will be producing on an everyday basis, but a project that will ensure that the non-profit is self-sustainable, should we no longer have donors that back it. And also simply because baking is also therapeutic, especially for victims in terms of dealing with anger issues, in terms of wanting to vent out. So we use the strategy of dough knitting. So they literally and physically knit that dough to be able to relieve themselves of this frustration and this anger that they have inside of them. And our bakery initiative is Bake for Hope. So we bake with the hope of getting the financial backup from the community. And we also bake with the hope of ensuring that these women are rehabilitated from whatever trauma that they are suffering or enduring.
Sure. Wow, that's such a great initiative and so creative, because I don't think a lot of people would think of such. And I would urge each and every person living in Mutuklung and even outside of Mutuklung to come. Please visit Mutuklung Network Against Women and Children Abuse, Domestic Violence. Please go there and buy this awesome bread. It tastes so good. Just go there and support. It's very affordable. And when you're buying the bread, you would know that at least you are helping someone out there face this demon that we are challenged with, which is gender-based violence, and also helping the center to be able to reach more people. So please, Kalakuba, go there and buy the bread there. It's locally made and it's made with love. So, Lebo, we are about to close. I feel like we need not even an hour, a whole day to discuss everything because this is so broad. I was even thinking now as we've been talking that there's someone who posted a question and said, do men really need rights? Do they what's the word? It's but do they, should they have rights? Do they have the right to rights? So I was thinking,
do they
deserve rights? Yes, but I was thinking, that means people really don't understand gender-based violence because the media and people are always showing men abusing, but they never even show women or anybody else abusing the men or other women, because even women abuse one another. So I thank you that you covered everything regarding gender-based violence. So I want you to tell us, where can people find you? Where can people find you? What should they expect from the organization? And anything else that you want to add?
I just not to comment about do men really deserve the rights, because I think that on its own is a very controversial statement for one to make, but we don't know as to where was she making it from. So, but in terms of what I've covered, I've just given you just the basic. I think I've just covered the intro. And I think as the topic expands, you would then need more experts to come in and give their experts advice and another approach, because like I said, it's a basket of services where everybody's doing something. I'm just giving you from a supporting point of view and also from a community-based organization in terms of the activities that we do. So within this COVID-19 period, we're very proud that we've just received our COVID-19 funding from One Young World, which is amounting to $10,000 US, which we need to use within this COVID-19 period. So basically with this COVID-19 funding, we will continue to accommodate abused women and kids at the shelter, obviously adhering to the World Health Organization's guidelines in terms of COVID-19, but also social distancing and adhering to protective gear such as wearing masks and regularly sanitizing and washing of hands. Number 2, we will be offering, actually not we will be, but we will continue to offer online and telephonic trauma counseling services. We are just going to add our free Please Call Me activity, where if you find yourself in a position of danger, you can be able to say star 140 star 0827547465. So basically that will be you sending a please call me to our number at the center, and we'll be able to call you back and just want to understand as to what the nature of the problem is. And we'll share the numbers. And obviously 140 will be if you are a Vodacom subscriber, but obviously they will change with other, what do you call them? Network providers. Thank you so much. Sekgowa is not my first language. But yeah, and also in addition to that, if people need to go anywhere in terms of further intervention with pertaining to their problem, like going to SASA for a child support grant, going to court for an interim protection order, going to maybe the hospital cooperative to get access to your medication simply because of the trauma that you endured, then we offer free transport services, because we know that public transportation is now a bit of a challenge, especially with the social distancing and people being so much at risk of contacting the COVID-19 virus, especially within taxis, because I personally don't use it, but I wouldn't even want to say whether is it being followed on or not. But if it's a victim of ours, we also provided their free transport services. And also we are on Facebook Mututhu Network, so we will be regularly updating information as to where people can access us. We will be doing pamphlet distributions as well to people who are unable to log on to social media and be able to read what it is that we are providing. But other than that, you can get Miko Senteng, stand number 2387, extension 1 Mututu, front opposite the post office, not far from USAID. And please, we urge you to buy our bread. Don't wait for Mandela Day and want to come and help us clean or to feed the hunger or to feed the abused. That we also acknowledge and appreciate. But by buying a loaf of bread, which goes at 7 rands, you are helping save a woman and a child from domestic violence and also from rape. So Bake for Hope is the hands that were once broken, the hands that are making this beautiful bread.
Uslebo, thank you very much. This was such an empowering and impactful interview, educative. I know that each and every person who's going to be watching this will be learning a lot.
I hope so.
Our eyes are open. I know my eyes are open to a lot of things. When you were talking, I was like, oh, okay. So I know that a lot of people are going to enjoy this interview as much as I did. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you've shared. I feel like there's still more that we need to talk about, but when God permits, we'll have a season 2 and of moments of reflection, and I'll call you back and we will talk, because I don't think we can ever say we have finished the topic or have finished talking about gender-based violence. There's just so much to talk about. But I thank you for everything, and I still have some I still need to go do some research and studying. After this, I'm a very changed woman. I feel like I didn't know a lot of things, and now I'm like, okay, now my eyes are open. So thank you.
Welcome.
So your last words to people, what would you like to say to people out there, like motivation or anything that you want to say?
I'll just keep it short, and my message will be towards this COVID-19 that we are all victims of, because really irretorically watching. And my message is, this too shall pass.
Sure. This too shall pass. Well, guys, that was another episode of Moments of Reflection with Ms. T on MCI TV. I hope you were holding your notebook and pen and just writing down all the information. Please keep repeating this video, write down all the details that Lebo was talking about, because I really think it's very important for all men and women to have this. I also have a number for the national hotline, gender-based violence hotline. It's 0800 428 428 0800 428 428. They do respond and they can locate your location. As long as you are anywhere in South Africa, they'll be able to help you. So this is a number for both men and women. Whether you are a victim or not, this can help someone. So please keep all those contacts safe. This is from you, your girl, Miss T. Thank you, and next time, please do not forget to like, share, comment, and yeah, give us the love. I appreciate everyone who's supporting us. Thank you and goodbye.